Tugume Moses, the Attorney General of PFF. I'd like to brief you about the new bill, the Protection of Sovereignty Bill number 13 of 2026. On behalf of People's Front for Freedom and my capacity as the Attorney General of PFF, I take the honor to inform you, urge you that this bill should be rejected in its entirety. If you look at that bill, the object clause, it has 5 parts and 30 clauses. If you look at the object clause, you may assume it's a good thing. But when you go into the body, it's one that has all the characteristics of a draconian law. Draconian comes from an old legislator called Draco from Athens of the 7th century. He believed so much in imposing death sentences even on misdemeanors, minor offenses. Now, if you look at that bill in the objects clause, it purports to be aimed at promoting the sovereignty of Uganda, the sovereignty of Ugandans, regulate foreign funding, create a department of peace and security, and demarcate and emphasize the core functions that are a preserve of government under Article 189, Schedule 6 of the Constitution. Unfortunately, it is more concerned about penalizing Ugandans for seeking survival. And I would briefly take you through the 12 provisions in the law that are creating numerous offenses with the worst punishments. If you read those provisions, you may think this is a masterpiece from hell. Clause 5, subclause 4, clause 6, subclause 4, clause 7, subclause 4, clause 11, clause 10, subclause 2, clause 11, subclause 3, clause 13, clause 14, subclause 2, clause 22, subclause 2, clause 23, subclause 1 and 2 and 3, clause 25, subclause 3, clause 26, subclause 2, clause 28, subclause 2. All those provisions are creating offenses and punishments. The punishments are in billions. If you are an entity and you breach the clauses I have cited, you pay a penalty of 4 billion. That's 200,000 currency points. And each currency point is 20,000 Uganda shillings. If you are an individual, you pay 2 billion. Now, this particular law is creating several threats, not only to a particular section of people, but to almost all Ugandans. I'll take you through the definition itself of what they are calling a foreigner. If you look at clause 1, which is the interpretation, it is expanding the definition of a foreigner to include a Ugandan who is residing outside Uganda. Now, where does that leave our children who went to seek a living outside Uganda? Now, the Ugandan who is here, that is dealing with the Ugandan who doesn't say Uganda, you are declared an agent of a foreigner. Now, if you go ahead and read clause F, clause F in the interpretation clause, it gives the minister powers to declare any person, any entity a foreigner by way of a statutory instrument. Now, the specific threats that this bill is going to cause are the following. One, freedom of worship is under threat. Religious institutions that depend so much on foreign aid will be committing offenses if they receive aid exceeding 400 million Uganda shillings without first getting clearance from the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Department of Peace and Security, which is also in the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Look at Article 29, Clause 1, Paragraph C, that guarantees freedom of worship, freedom to practice a religion. How will these religions survive, religious institutions survive, when they are encumbered when it comes to seeking foreign assistance? This particular bill is also a threat to international solidarity. We are in solidarity with the entire world. Uganda is one island. We live in a global village. Most of the ideologies that we believe in and espouse were not originated from here. Now, they are saying, should you get an assistance in furtherance of a foreign ideology that is in contrast with the local made ideologies, you have committed an offense. Together with that, you are affecting freedom of conscience, freedom of expression, that are really not part of a democratic society. The bill is also a threat to the African philosophy of Ubuntu. The major tenet of the African philosophy of Ubuntu is I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am. Now, does that mean if I have a problem here, maybe I'm starving, and I have a relative in Kenya or Rwanda who is going to send me assistance that exceeds the threshold in the bill, I should first run to the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Department of Peace and Security, to get clearance before money can be sent to help a dying grandmother who has a heart problem. That one is not a good idea. It is also a threat to the principle of a good Samaritan. When there is a catastrophe, a good Samaritan is all over the globe. They come running. Surely should we subject them to our fears of regime survival? Rescue situations. When a neighbor has a problem, when someone has a problem, we are always, by instinct, by nature, as brothers keepers, bound to run and rescue. So if they come running to help us, because they are foreigners, this bill is encumbering them. Ladies and gentlemen, most of you are sports fans and music fans. This particular law is making it an offense for you to promote a foreign interest at the expense of a Ugandan interest. Now, fans of Arsenal, fans of Man U, who are so keen on European leagues at the expense of Uganda credits, at the expense of our local teams here, you are going to be arrested and charged and be made to pay 2 billion. That by promoting foreign football leagues, you are jeopardizing our own here sports, our sports here. Now, the definition of a disruptive activity is also ambiguous in clause 1. It is drafted in a way that doesn't make it exhaustive. It says that disruptive activities includes In legislative drafting, when we say includes, it means the list is not exhaustive. They will get you for any other act and tell you you are disruptive. Same thing to the definition of a foreigner, also the list is not exhaustive. I have told you the people under threat are those who are Mucheyo, and all of us are also under threat, given the fact that the minister can pass a statutory instrument and expand the list. Political actors are in trouble, because that one means if People's Front for Freedom is in touch of another political party, maybe in Nigeria, that also believes in freedom, and that political party wants to donate to us a public address system for furtherance of our political activities, we shall have to seek approval of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Department of Peace and Security. Now, the choice of the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Department of Peace and Security was also not well thought out. If we are dealing with controlling foreign funding, in our view, the right minister should have been the Minister of Finance, and the right department should have been the Bank of Uganda and Financial Intelligence Authority. Those are agencies that are already in existence, and they are doing a good job, especially in fighting money laundering. If it is about promoting the sovereignty of this country, we have a ministry in charge of national guidance. We have a department of patriotism. Now, for God's sake, why subject the sovereignty of a country to a mere department of peace and security, whose composition is also not disclosed in this bill? Now, if you look at clause 3, paragraph 3, the Department of Peace and Security is supposed to consult other government agencies in its activities. However, the law, rather the bill, does not make the advice binding. If that department ever consulted any ministry, maybe foreign affairs, on foreign policy, the advice that ministry gives will not be binding on that department. Now, if you look at clause 4 of that bill, it creates functions of the Department of Peace and Security, and among those functions, I pray to draw your attention to paragraph C, to develop and enforce its own guidelines concerning registration of agents of a foreigner. Now, you create a department, you give it powers to make its own guidelines, you also give it powers to enforce those guidelines. Where is the principle of natural justice that you can't sit in your own case? We have a very bad culture here of passing guidelines that are always in conflict with the parent law and the Constitution. And the clause that we have cited does not even compel the department to subject those guidelines to further scrutiny and approval by minister or otherwise. You remember the incident when we had elections, when the law said this, that people can be at polling stations within a given radius, and the Electoral Commission was passing guidelines saying otherwise. We are likely to face a similar situation where the Department of Peace and Security will come up with guidelines that are conflicting with the law and the Constitution. Now, the same Act Clause 4 is giving the minister mandate, powers to assign this department any other function. He is not even going to assign those functions through statutory instruments or regulations, because the clause is silent about that. Now, the other concern, the bill purports to operationalize Article 189 and Schedule 6 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Now, that Schedule 6 of the Constitution gives a list of the functions, the core functions of government that the rest of us are not supposed to perform. Whereas the Constitution had set out those functions, it had not criminalized other partners who came in to assist government in performing those functions. There are about 29 of them, but of concern, you can look at public services, you can look at education, you can look at agriculture, research, public roads, among others, and public holidays. Now, what this law is saying, don't come to pretend to help government in fulfilling its functions. If you find a pothole on the road and you attempt to mobilize people to come and fill that pothole, you are going to be compelled to pay 2 billion as a penalty. The program we have been having of Bulungi Bwansi, where you mobilize masses to come and assist to perform a function that government has failed to perform, has also been criminalized under this law. Now that brings me to the health, because health is also a core function in Schedule 6. If a hospital doesn't have a cancer machine and you organize a run to buy a cancer machine, that it also has problems. Hospitals have a problem in taking care of health patients, and the Kabaka says, I'm organizing a run to raise funds to perform a function that government has failed to perform. That one is also being criminalized. We have always been invited in schools where we are students as OBs and OGs in government schools. If you go there and purport to help in the building the hall, the library, the dining hall, first prepare 2 billion in your pocket. Now, in some instances in this clause, the minister is required to consult cabinet before passing regulations, and in other instances, he is given an open check to do as he wishes. Now, what this law is creating, it is briefly telling you, don't attempt to help government, whether it is cleaning up the town because there is a lot of garbage, whether it is helping with stocking a government hospital with facilities. Don't even invite your friends abroad to come and assist in stocking a health center in your village, or even giving the bursaries to kids who are in the government school. That those are government functions. First get clearance before you attempt to come and assist. Now, the bill is giving the minister so many assignments to make regulations. Even regulations for registration of agents of foreigners, regulations for issuance of certificates to agents of foreigners, but the bill is not setting timelines as to when the minister should make those regulations. So it is very possible that the law will be passed. You will be required first to get a certificate before transacting with a foreigner, but then the bureaucracy and the delay in passing regulations will frustrate you. Now, this bill further threatens Article 29 by encumbering freedom of association, freedom of assembly, movement, expression, and conscience. The bill is a threat to the media. There is a clause in this bill that if you publish any information that has the effect of depicting Uganda's economy as being in bad shape, that has the effect of discouraging people from investing in this country, you are committing an offense called economic sabotage. A person who publishes information, that is now clause 13, a person who publishes information or participates in any act or activity that weakens or damages the economic system or viability of the country, causing economic disruption, insecurity or instability, commits an offense punishable by 4 billion if you are an entity and 2 billion if you are an individual, plus 20 years of imprisonment, or both. Now, in the practical sense, that one means if you came across tobacco farmers crying that they are being poorly paid, that the prices have gone down, and you publish that story, and the investors withdraw their money from Uganda and refuse to invest in tobacco, or sugarcane farmers crying that Kenyara has undercut the price, and as a result, shareholders withdraw their money from being shareholders, you will be got under this clause. Or you remember an incident where an investor was kidnapped from Pearl of Africa Hotel, and the journalist ended up being taken to a safe house for publishing that story. Now, in this one, they are saying they will not bother kidnapping you. They will just produce you in court and tell you to pay 2 billion and or put you in prison for 20 years. Why have you reported that an investor has been conned or an investor has been killed? You are discouraging people from investing in Uganda. Same thing to tourists, people who are in tourism, tour and travel companies. You always give travel advisories to your clients. Should you publish communication to your clients telling them that it is not safe to visit Uganda this time because of ABCD, and the tourists don't come, and Uganda doesn't get the money, you will be charged under this clause for economic sabotage. Now, that one is a threat to freedom of the media that is enshrined in our constitution in Article 29. Remember, if the camera you are using was a camera given to you by a friend who is a foreigner, and you didn't report that to the Department of Peace and Security, and you are using it to cover political activity, the bill seeks to punish you. Now, this law is also a threat to cross-border cultural practices. The Bagisu who have kinsmen in Kenya, the Kakwa who have kinsmen in Sudan, the Aluru who have kinsmen in Congo, the Bakonyi who have kinsmen in Congo, the Samia who have kinsmen in Kenya, the Banyarwanda who have kinsmen across the border in Rwanda, they are under threat under this particular law. For us in Bunyoro, whenever we have a Mpango in the palace, we invite our fellow Banyoro who are in Congo. They come and participate. And this particular law is actually killing our politics. That if you have Ugandans who are in the diaspora and they are supporting a particular candidate here or a particular political party, they are forbidden from doing that. Because the law is saying that they are influencing elections in the country, which is against the aspirations of our sovereignty. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the country cannot employ our youth here. We should not begin passing laws and policies that discourage the younger men and ladies from seeking survival abroad. Now, when you go to our constitution under Article 30, Clause 1 and Clause 2, it says every Ugandan has a right to participate in the affairs of government individually or through his representatives. Clause 2 says every Ugandan has a right to participate in peaceful activities, to influence the policies of government through civic organizations. Now, this particular law is saying, should any Ugandan who doesn't say Uganda do anything that seeks to influence policies here at home, is committing an offense. And if you deal with that person, you become an agent of that foreigner. And therefore, you cannot say on behalf of so and so my brother is concerned about this. Even discussing this bill here, if this bill is passed, would require us to first get permission from the Department of Peace and Security. And yet, if you read the constitutions of political parties in this country, even NRM, they have a diaspora league to cater for Ugandans who are staying outside Uganda. Now, this bill is also a threat to Article 43 of our Constitution, because the limitations it is imposing are beyond what is acceptable and demonstrably justifiable in a free and democratic society, or what is provided for in the Constitution. Now, you can only pass this bill and enforce it if you go back at the Constitution and delete and remove Article 43 and declare Uganda as a country that is not free, that's not democratic. That's when you can be able to implement this law. Now, the law is also a threat to life, contrary to the Constitution, in particular Article 22. You all know that in most cases in this country we have families that are surviving on foreign aid, that are surviving on their relatives staying outside Uganda for treatment, for food, and for all aspects of life. Now, by blocking that, you are indirectly, or may I say directly, compromising the right to life. Now, if you look at the statistics as released by the World Bank, in the annual result of 2026, the Cheyo remittances was 1.3 billion US dollar, which is about 4.5 towards Uganda's GDP. So passing this bill, you are in a way attacking, threatening the country's GDP. I have discussed the freedom to media. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this bill is killing even the achievements we had got, the little achievements we had got in the Supreme Court case of Charles Onyango and Andrew Mwenda versus the Attorney General. Supreme Court Civil Appeal number 2 of 2022. Now that also what I've told you, decriminalized the offense of publishing false news. Now this bill is bringing an offense of publishing information that may not necessarily be false, but for as long as it has an effect on the country's economy, and they are calling it economic sabotage. The entire bill is a threat to regional integration. It is a threat to Pan-Africanism, and it is a threat to our obligations to the international community. We have so many treaties and conventions that we have assented to that are binding us. We cannot begin legislating outside the laws of the international community that we signed. Ladies and gentlemen, the law is turning trivial matters into crimes. Even mere receiving airtime from a foreigner. If you had a talk show on radio discussing a government policy that's about to be passed, and you don't have enough time, and you call a friend abroad to send you airtime so that you can call into the radio, and you don't declare that airtime of 5,000 shillings to the Department of Peace and Security, you will have committed an offense. Because the law is saying any assistance, it doesn't set the value of the assistance. It's another draconian penal law to cover up for the regime's failures to fulfill its obligations as in a situation of a family head that fails to educate his children, fails to feed his children and wife, fails to offer treatment to his children, and does not want anyone else to provide food, treatment, clothing, and any other form of assistance. This law is meant to stifle people's efforts to seek survival alternatives outside begging from the regime. It is also meant to completely close all vent holes through which we were accessing some little oxygen to facilitate us to demand for our rights and freedoms that are inherent and not granted by the state. We urge Parliament, we urge all Ugandans to reject this law that purports to promote sovereignty of this country when actually it is killing it. It is creating offenses that are deliberately meant to sterilize Ugandans, to make them dumb, and it is an attack on Article 3 of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda that compels all Ugandans to do whatever they can within their means, whether locally or internationally, to ensure that they protect the Constitution and this country. We can only improve the dignity of this country, protect its sovereignty by improving the quality of the functions, by opening space for people to be able to provide for themselves and stop being beggars. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.